Hi, I'm Jason from Alpha Graphic Designs, and I'll be going over these Mach components which require no scripting and also no knowledge of Flash whatsoever. Only a couple things we need to know with the interface before we start here. One is how to publish your actual screen after you create it, and that would be under File and Publish. That will then produce a Swift file that you can load in to Mach, and that Swift file will reside next to your FLA. Now, where do the FLAs come from? Well, you've downloaded it here under machcomponents.zip, and right-clicking and extracting that gives you a Mach component 1.0.1 FLA. Double-click on that, and then I'll either open it in Flash MX or greater to the most recent version. There's also a Flash.dll plugin there, which Art and Brian has done a tremendous job with, and I highly recommend using the newest update of Flash. It resolves a ton of messaging issues and works brilliantly. So let's see here. So after you've done that, take your Flash DLL and drag and drop it into the plugins folder inside of Mach3, and that is right here. So dump that in there and overwrite the one that's existed right there. I'm not sure if version 3.0 has a new one or not, but just make sure you don't have two Flash DLLs in there either. Don't want that. So we'll come back into Flash, and how simple and fast and quickly is it to put together in here. Let's take a look here. We're going to bring it over one screen. On your right hand side, it's called Libraries. Under here you'll see all of your components, and you can get a preview of what they look like here. If this library panel isn't here, you can go to Windows and click on Library. That will pop up, and then you can choose your elements that you'll just drag and drop into here. Well, let's take a look. I'm going to drag and drop a DRO to start off with, the most common here, and kind of hide all that out of our way. I'm going to left click, hold down the left click, drag it where I want it, drop it. Whoops, that's not as a LED. Drag it over here. Now, at this point, I can just simply right click and do free transform and resize this to whatever I feel need be here, however you want it. Now you want to set the parameters. So let's click on down here under parameters, do launch component inspector, and that'll pull this up, or you can go under Windows component inspector with the object selected. Off, not selecting the object, will be empty. Selected the object, we'll have it. These are made for Mach components here, this component inspector, and you can easily drag it out so you can take a good look here what we're looking at. So what is in here? We can change text, and in all of the components you get the option to change your font and your text and to whatever font you have loaded on your computer, the actual size, label size, the X, Y, and Z position, and these can actually be positioned off of your object way up here if you want to label that, and that'll actually change with your DRO. You can actually enter in what you're going to be listening to. What do you want to listen from Mach? Is it a DRO, is it a label, or is it an LED? User label 5 will then give you the your user label 5 information, and once you type in there, we'll send to user label 5 if you choose it to be inputable. If you choose it not to be inputable, clicking on it, nothing will happen. If you click on it with inputable, you'll send it to user label 5 or whatever you have, DRO 800. Your DRO graphics, you can see in real time it change. Here's your steel, and all of these can either be user graphics or packaged along with the components. Currently this is what's in there now, but you can bring in your own graphics very easy, and I'll go over that at some other point. So once the user selects the DRO, then you want to change your graphic possibly, then you can go to steel. So they'll select it, it turns into steel. They either press escape or click somewhere else, and then it goes back to white. So that way it indicates that the user has clicked it and the user knows they've clicked it. As well as all the components have hotkeys. Down here under your hotkeys, you can either turn it on or turn it off. If you have it off and you click on Get Hotkey, it'll automatically turn it on for you. For example, if I wanted to set this DRO to respond to the key press of P, I would simply press P in my keyboard. Then it would log that on. Once the user inside of Mach presses P, this DRO is selected. It kills all of the other hotkeys, and then the user can type away on their keyboard and without calling on any other hotkeys. Once the user presses escape or enter after entering the value, or clicking somewhere off the screen or into an area that doesn't have a, or it clicks on another button even, then it brings back all of your hotkeys, etc. So that way you're able to type in user label values if you have hotkeys assigned to your alphabetical numeric keyboards. So let's go on to, that's DROs. In a nutshell, you can make them display whatever you want. No coding. There you go. Got it all. So let's go over and let's take a look at LEDs, which are very important here. Left click, drag, and drop. Come down to parameters, launch your component inspector. Once you have your object on there, again, you can just click on your objects and have the component inspector open at all times, and it'll automatically update and show you what's going on. Any values that are currently being displayed in the parameters are values set for that particular object. So here is your label. Typing in here will then type in a label over here. Choose whatever font you want. Once again, I'm not going to go over these again. You can choose your color and see it in real time. And then you can choose your align, bold, label size, X and Y position. Now with LEDs, you don't need to type in LED. You just type in the number. So if you want this object, this LED object, to listen to something, type in what you want it to listen to here. 800, 600, whatever. If you don't want it to listen to something, delete it, and then you can turn it into a button. So, and then that way it's not listening to something, now it's just a button. The user presses on it and it does something. Now if you want it to be a LED and a button, type something into your LED number. Now it'll listen to 800, and depending on its state will depend on what the button will do. Now your button has 4 different states, and well, actually it has 2 different states per state of the LED. So currently we're on LED 1, so we're getting information that we're 0, so the LED is not active. On the active state of the LED, if it is a button, you can choose an on-press event. So if the user presses the button, what would you like to do? Would I like to send an LED, a DRO, VB, a macro? Sending a macro will send an M500, for example, and you can just type in whatever you want. Let's say a VB code, you can do a whole strand of VB. Once they click and press that, it fires off the VB label. You would type in which label, label 5, and what the label will say, or what information. You can type in button and just type in the button 1021 number, or you can type in LED and tell it what specific value you want to send to that LED and which LED you want to send to. And you can also do there's a quick way here. A lot of us use toggle LEDs all the time. So instead of typing out the VB of this and that, whatever, just click on make it a button toggle. Now, whatever the value is, it's going to send the opposite on press. So that's a nice quick thing. Now for the press, under LED state 1, you get a hotkey for just the press. So when they press R, that is going to fire off this function if you set get hotkey for R on press. Now once they release that hotkey, it's going to send off whatever you want in this current position. So I'm releasing R key after pressing it. It'll fire whatever you want off here. If you don't want it to fire anything off, click on none. If you want it to fire off a VB command, click on it. So under LED state 1, my LED is not active. I get an on press and an on release event, and I can set up hotkeys for each of those events as well. I can also not turn it into a button for state 1, and it won't be a button for state 1. And I can also change the graphics for state 1. Let's say I turned it into an LED for a default LED. Now let's say it becomes active. 800 becomes active. Now we're in state 2. Under state 2, you can choose a different graphic altogether. So under state 2, I have this graphic. Under state 1, I have this graphic. So you can see now it's active. Oh, I've got this over here. Let's turn it into a button. Now let's say under state 1 I want to turn it into a button, but not under state 2. Under state 1 I don't want it a button, under state 2 I do. So you once again have the option for press and release in here as well. And once you actually see it working, you'll see the benefits of having on press and release, and you'll also see the benefits of having on press and release for your hotkeys as well. And you'll also see the benefits to having different states be whether they are a button or not. So if under my state 1 I go, hey, it's not active, I don't want to display anything, click on none. Now I put this green border around here so you can see where it is, but now it's actually, oops, let me undo that. But now it's actually just empty. So when you actually produce this, it'll be just an empty object. But under state 2, hey, I want it to be a button that displays. Then you get that. So I think there's a lot of power under these, a lot of different possibilities here for that. So let's go under to our next most important thing here is probably screen navigation. So let's bring up navigations here. Navigations are exact same thing as LEDs, but they're just buttons, they're not LEDs, and you just type in which frame you want to go to, 6 or 5 or whatever number, or you can type in and label your frames. Well, how do I know where 6 is? Well, currently we are on frame 5. So if you want to add a frame, let's say I press right click and do insert blank keyframe, then now I've added, now I've got a frame on layer 7. You can also use a hotkey F6 as well if you'd like. Now under 7 is a totally blank screen here, blank slate. You can go in and add all your components. So let's come back here and take a look at our navigation button. If I want, when the user presses this button to go to frame 7, I would type in 7. Now it will go to this frame. And that was just a right click, insert blank keyframe, or insert keyframe, which will copy everything that was on the previous frame over. But that's basically all. So that is navigations, and you can change in your label and your skin color and all that great stuff. So let's go over to, let's do messages. These are messages that pop up depending on the state of whatever you're looking at. So here is your label. You type in what you want it to say here at the top, your fonts, and then the actual message that's going to be displayed, chip LED. That'll be displayed here. You can also change the graphics of your message box and what it's going to listen to. Is it going to be a LED, a button, or a DRO? Let's say we're listening to LED 800. Well, we want to listen to a value. We want to listen to a number. Let's say we only want this to pop up if it's active, like 1. So anytime that LED 800 comes in 1, this will be visible. Now once it's visible, you have the option to then have the OK and cancel button do something in particular, and that you would write your VB code or just tell it to do whatever you want. And now let's say I wanted to listen to a DRO 800. If DRO 800 is a number, let's say if it's 5, then pop this up. If it's a number greater than 5, then pop this up. If it's a number less than 5, pop this up. And this kind of logic goes through all the components when wanting to receive information about what's going on, with the variable that you're looking at. And okay, so that's messages. Let's take a look at let's take a look at the gauges and then come back to runner. Okay, let's take a look at thermals. Thermals are will actually increase or decrease between 0 to 100, and or whatever value you want them to. So let's say I'm looking at DRO 821 or whatever DRO you want. Any DRO you want, you can look at, and then have that, and have the actual. Let me actually expand this, and then have it respond to that. So let me bring this up so you can see. Now the backdrop, you can choose white or black, or you can choose none, lay your own graphic on top of here, and then you've got your own little graphic there. So let's say that I want to listen to the value of this, and I just say I know it's going to be 300. So typing in 300 is your max value. Here will be 0, here will be 300. If DRO 821 comes in as 150, it'll be right here in the middle. Now let's say it's a variable data that's coming in. If you want to listen to what the max value is going to be from another DRO, click on max value from a DRO. Let's say my 1200 is telling me that with this current tool, this max value in RPMs, let's say if you're looking at your spindle, should be 10,000 RPMs. Well, if 1200 says 10,000 RPMs, then this max at the top will be 10,000 RPMs. So 0 to 10,000 RPMs. If your machine is running at 5,000, then it would be right here in the middle. And what happens if it goes over this value, whether it is from a DRO or whether you manually typed it in. If it's over 300, it will fire off whatever you want. Leave these blank if you don't want to use them. Leave whatever blank that you don't want to use and it won't be implemented at all. So that is gauges, and there's a lot of uses for those. So let's go over to our, those are thermals, so let's go over to our gauges. Drop a gauge on here, and once again this is completely skinnable and works pretty much the same as the thermals. Click on parameters and launch component inspector. Choose whatever label you want, fonts, colors, and which DRO numbers you're looking for. So let's say I'm looking at, I don't know, DRO 116. You can come in here and change your backdrop. Once again, you can choose none and then add your own graphics in here. You can either put it on top or below it, whichever you want. Drag and drop it. I'll show an example here in just a little bit that I dragged something from the internet. Your gauge range. Once again, it can be either 100, and that will then display, break it up into 4 parts. So let's say I put 300. If I put 300 on here, then that will break it up. If I want to max from a DRO, let's say this is actually DRO 1200, which is telling me my spindle is 10,000 RPMs, then I can do that, and this will automatically, go from 0 to 10,000 RPMs. Will be up here at 0, and then it'll divide it by 4. So, but let's say I go, well, I'm not really interested in 10,000 RPMs. I want to see a percentage. Then do set text manually. Once you do that, then you're telling it, oh well, 100%. You could even put in 300%, and you can see over here that it automatically changes 0, 75, 150. If I put in 50, it would divide it up, so you can see a percentage. Once again, if your gauges are over this max value that you're looking at, then you can set an LED or a DRO or have it fire off something. Alright, let's take a look at our G-code. This is the native. If you drag and drop this G-code, then you're bringing Artsoft's G-code into Flash. And basically all you're going to do is set your parameter and tell it which number G-code it is. So let's say you're on your first screen, name it 1. If you have a G-code on your second screen, name this 2. But I would actually highly recommend using the Flash G-code. And the way this works, because you're going to get a lot of different settings in here. The way this works is go to parameters and launch, is that you get to choose your background color when it is not active, meaning it's on the screen, it's running through G-code, but a person hasn't clicked on it. You can change your background colors. You can see it in real time as I change this. If I wanted it to be maybe red, and then your actual text color, you can change that around. Your cell rollover. So when the mouse is over a particular line in the G-code, it'll change colors. Cell rollover selected. They actually left click on that particular line 5. It'll change colors. Now let's take a look at once you select the G-code. You can then change your color. So let's say you wanted, once they selected it, to be blue. Then you could do that, and then you choose your text color and so forth and so on. And just by clicking on this button, you can see your two. You can see in real time what they're going to look like when they're selected or not selected. I click on here, but you can click over here too. Current line is this area up here. In Artsoft, it's in the middle. Is current line. Mine's at the top. I'll move it down later, but currently it's at the top here, and you can change that color and see it in real time as I come through here. So that really can distinguish, your screen apart from a lot, and also add a lot of availability. Your label font, what font you want these to display, how big the actual code is. You can actually center this, right? Justify, which I actually found that centering it makes it sometimes easy to read the G-code to have that all centered. Now here's an interesting thing. Let's say in my G-code I want to send the total file size. I just loaded in Roadrunner and it's 2600 lines of code. If I want to send that value, just type it in here, some user DRO. Once you receive the DRO, you can have your gauge show you the percentage of file that's finished or whatever you want. Alright, so let's go to MDI. If you want to use the Mach native MDI, just drag in Mach MDI, and that's it. You're all set to go. Now, I would highly suggest using the Mach MDI for Flash, using the Flash version, because inside of here in the, let's launch our component inspector, these are going to be made available. Hotkeys to select your MDI very shortly. I just hadn't time to get to it. You can come in here and change your graphics of the MDI to whatever you want. Let's say, actually, let's go to that black here for a second so I can display some of this. Now your text color is the actual MDI color. Your text selected color means the user has selected this text and it will change to red, let's say. Your button color is this button here. That little button, that drop down menu will actually show you, when you drop that down, will show you your previous entries into the MDI. That brings us to the MDI color, which is the actual this actual little border around here. You can change it, and then the MDI text, that's after they select this button, this drop down menu comes and you can choose the background color and the text. And then of course you can choose your label size, your X and Y positioning of your MDI. I mean, you could, you know, however you want to do that. So that's the MDI. And there's a lot more that I want to add in with the components, and later on when I add this, you can start building your screens now. And when I add components or enhancements or fixes, it will automatically update your screen, and you don't have to go and redo your whole screen when a new update comes out. Just next time you click on the object, it'll have whatever you want. So we've gone over navigation, menus. Refresh is a thing that you put on each frame. Just drag and drop the refresh and name it. Oh, I'm on screen 2. I just need to know what screen you're on so I can refresh and make sure everything's going right. Sliders are pretty cool. You'll drag and drop it and it'll come in this direction. If you can, rotate it. What I did is I right clicked and did free transform, held the rotate and shift and just rotated it. It's a little thing here. Now it doesn't look that great, but this little gray thing, whatever, but when you actually publish it, you'll actually see the cool graphics. Just with the sliders, we can't get all the effects that we want. So let's say I want my gray knob. Once again, you get all your text, label your field, check whichever DRO you want to look at, and the format will be displayed. Now you can choose, you know, and see in real time it change here. Let's say I want it to be gray with a white background. Let's take this text out. You know, then you get a little knob there. So let's say I don't want a background because I want to add my own line in the background. Just click none. Another interesting thing is click none for the knob. You can place this over one of your other objects like a gauge or a DRO, and when the user presses on this and slides it, actually send information. I'll kind of demonstrate that here. Once again, with the sliders you can choose a max value. Here's an important thing here. On sliders, when you press your slider and move it, do you want to send the information while you're pressing it? If you do, then click this to on press. If you want to actually send the value on releasing it, then do on release. And this can be effective in certain situations depending on what you're controlling. Do you want your slider to watch this value, DRO number? So let's say that my feed rate, you know, was at 10,000, I don't know, like 100, then this slider would move and to represent what your current feed is. Now, if you don't want it to watch it, just click on false. If you do, how often do you want this to update? 0 is fine. The only reason we have this here is so if you move the slider to, let's say, 200 and you're going at 100 feed rate, it might take your machine a little bit to actually catch up. Well, this slider, you'll slide it up to 200, you'll let go, and it'll come back down. You might want to wait like 10 milliseconds or a second for your actual machine to speed up before refreshing the slider to actually show it. And if there's any resolves that anybody knows a better way to do this, let me know, but it seems to be working well. So your max slider gauge 100, 0 to 100, and this is your that's that slider. This one's going to come in this direction, so depending on whichever direction you want, use a specific slider. Toolpath is native to Mach. Right click, transform, bring it up. Each screen that you have a toolpath, just label it, parameters, call it 1, oh I'm on screen 2, type in 2, you know, oh I'm on screen 3, type in 3. And that'll just let you know which it is. So that is the components. Now here's the really cool thing here, is the runner. Runner's pretty cool. What it does is you can drag and drop these as many as you want. Try not to exceed 100. If I see that, let me know if you're using more than 5 on a single page. Don't exceed 100 per page, meaning I'm on screen 1, my page 1, my program run screen. Try not to exceed 100 just for your program run screen, but you can exceed 100 throughout the entire screen. It's entire screen layout. But the way these work is, here we're going to listen to, you have 3 optional OEMs to listen for, and listen to either a number, a particular number, whether it's greater than or less than. Let's see, what else did I add? Greater than, less than, or none means you're not going to listen to it at all. So let's say I want to listen to LED 800, and only when it's not active do I want to then listen to DRO 800 and 801, for example. So I'm going to say if my e-stop is not active and DRO 800 is greater than 220 and DRO 801 is greater than 20, then do this. Set LED 1205 to 1, set LED 1206 to 1, set DRO 802 to 5, whatever you want. Leave any fields empty that you don't want to use. You can listen to just one LED or DRO or user label and just do, just a single row right here. So if all this is true, then it will fire this off. Else, do this. So I really like these because we always are using if-else statements, like in case statements, all the time. I'd really like to expand on this if people find this useful. It's kind of a graphically pleasing instead of sitting there and writing out all the code. Just fill in the fields. And I'd like to get more complex, but I'd like to get some feedback and see what people think. Otherwise, it's faster for me probably just to write the code, but I think this would help a lot of people here. So that's the runners. Let's see. Let's get into, we got into LEDs. Let's get into the screen. So this is a LED. And this is a LED, but this particular one is a button, and I really want to show how these change as you click on each of them, so you can take a look here. I'm going to set this off to the side. Now watch here, as I click on these, they will change depending on what they are and will automatically display their property. Let's say that while I'm screen designing, I want to look at what my let's take a look here with something that changes here. Let's say I want to look at what the state of my MDI looks like active. I can just click on that and then click on something else, and it will stay showing that state. If I want to show the state of tool request, or let's say, what do I have as LED? I think Z inhibit. I can show state 1 and LED 2 and then just leave it there, and it'll stay on LED 2. Once you publish your Swift, then of course it'll update and show the appropriate incidents. So I think that is about it. Here's some user labels, and I'll actually go through here and demonstrate this in the Swift. And I don't think I missed anything. We went over everything here. So let's take a look. I'm going to open up Mach. Let's take a look. So here's our messages. What this message was looking for is the e-stop active? If the e-stop is active, then pop this up. Now let's say I click on cancel. These won't just continually pop up until the e-stop's not active. Click on cancel, it will disappear. Now I'm going to reset my e-stop. Now I'm going to reset it, and then once again it pops up. Another thing I have is where it's semi-transparent. If you don't like this, I'll take it out, or I'll make it an option where you can choose. So we're going to click on OK. Now that automatically resets your e-stop. Now I've got a feed rate too slow. If I click on OK, that will automatically come up to 100. So now with the hotkeys, I have these set up between 1, 2, and 3. Now I'm going to click on 1. It automatically selects this and highlights my text. I'm going to click 0 and enter. Now it resets and sets it to 0. Now if you notice, I was able to, let me click 1 again. I'm going to click 1, the number 1 again. Now it's killed the actually watching your hotkeys so you can enter in values. Alright, so that makes sense. And let's click on 2 and make that 0, and 3 and make that 0. Whoops, 0. Let's say I select a DRO. simply by selecting outside anywhere in an empty field or selecting another button will deactivate that as well. Here's some LED buttons. One thing to consider, on release, some people might think, oh, well, it's responding so slow. Now remember, on release, it's when you release the mouse. As you can see, these are updating immediately and very fast because it's on press. So remember, if you do it on release, when it's waiting for the user to let go of the mouse before actually firing something off. Here's just some demonstrations here. Let's load in a G-code. And actually, let's play around with this. As you can see, when I selected this, my MDI, it's red. So let's say I say G0, X 3.4, Y 4.5, Z 5.6, or whatever. Now I'm going to press Enter, and it just, I moved your machine or whatever. I'm going to select this again, press Enter, select it again. I'm just going to enter in a lot just so you can see. Now I'm going to click on this. Now when this drops down, I've got all my values entered here. I made a red background with white text, and I also have a slider if it over exceeds this boundary. And so I can just click on that and then press Enter, and it'll send the same thing that I've already sent. These are some user labels. I'm going to type in here. Let me type in test1, and that's sending to the user label 5, I think. Now let's say I clear that out, and I send from a button. That's going to send my VB, send user label, whatever to that. Here's an example of on press. Here's forward run and reverse run. Now let's say I'm going to zero everything and refer home. And I'm going to do jog follow. When I press my forward button, initially I'm pressing start, run my G-code, and I'm holding it down. Now I release my button and it pauses the machine. I'm going to come over here and just lower. Now this actually slider is responding to an on release. So I'm going to lower this to about 6. I'm going to release it, and then it sends the information. Now I'm slowing my feed over right, so when I'm pressing forward run, I can slowly move my machine forward. On release stops it. Now I'm going to reverse run. I'm holding it down. Release stops it. So you can actually go in here with the opportunity to have on press and on release and really fine tune. If you've got an area that might have a sliver of material you need to go back in, you can just go in here and change up how fast that's going to go, and manually go back and forth on it. So let's say I want to jog the machine. Jog on. I'm going to be in continuous mode, and this slider, I'm going to bring this all the way down. Jog the machine. It's going to jog really slow. Now I'm going to speed it up, and that's why sliders are kind of nice. Instead of entering in a value, it's much quicker. Let's see, tool requests. These values here. If I want to manually set it, I can put 200, let's say, and that will send my feed rate to 200, which I have a caution. I have a message pop up if that's 200 or greater. I think it's at 200. So I can either press OK and it'll reset it to 100. Now let's see what happens with an example if I keep pushing this. So at this area here, it hits the red. It says caution, you're getting close to your max speed. Let's say I cancel that and my machine goes over my max speed because this gauge is listening for it. Would you like to reset your feed rate? I click on no, I don't want to. Now I have it pop up and say, are you sure? If you continue with this data, it'll be logged, blah blah blah. So you can have messages pop up, other messages depending on your cancel or OK state too. These are just reset. Kind of displaying how you can click on to reset things. I think that's about it. One example here was with this particular gauge. I'm going to rewind the file. As I come through the file, you can see this increase and showing me, because I'm pulling this DRO value that I sent from here of the total file size of the G-code, and I'm saying 0%, 100%. And as I'm going through here, it's taking that DRO and going, oh, this is how far we are through it. And so you can see it displaying how far we are through the percentage wise. What else did we forget? Anything? M500. I actually have my M500 set up. So I fired that M500 and it executed this code. And it's saying M500 was called and set LED at 1211 to 1. Click on OK. Now I've made this LED button up here also pop up red when that's active. Now let's say I want to manually pop that on and off. I can do that because I've turned this into a button. This one's just I've turned this LED into a button. This one's just a button. So let's go take a look here. This is a program run screen. I layered these buttons, kind of interesting idea. Another thing is I just found online some thermometer thing and just dragged and dropped it in here to kind of display this. Here is a mixture of a slider and a thermal gauge. And the slider I turned to none for the graphics for both, and I skinnied up my my thermal gauge here. Now look what happens. I'm on 33 right here. As I pull up, I'm actually able to pull on the actual gauge. So this is kind of interesting idea. Now here I'm pulling here, and I can pull over here. And you see my gauge actually rotating. This is another one I just pulled off the line and threw it in here too. So you can see all three corresponding and working together. It's really interesting, very powerful, a lot you can do with that. So let's say, oh, here's the MDI, I didn't even get to that. Single click will break into it so you can edit it, and now you can choose, let me go back here. So I'm going to single click in here, and let's say I want to start from line, let me type in here, 2000. Well, that's 200, 2000. So under, let me actually break out and show that again. I'm going to click on 2000, enter. The MDI line automatically goes to 2000. I'm going to select this, and let's say I want to start from 2008. I clicked on it, and now I'm going to double click off. So a single click will select it, a double click will deselect it. Now I'm going to say run from here. It goes to 2008. Now it needs to make its prepositional move. Now it made its move. Now it's going to start going through there. So some powerful features, and sky's the limit. Get anything we want. Thanks a lot.